There's a quote in Shakespeare's Hamlet that defines for theater makers their essential task: to hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time his form and pressure. Shakespeare is saying, pay attention to how human beings behave and reflect that behavior back to them from the stage so that they might better know themselves and perhaps even become accountable for their actions. Globally, people are becoming more and more keenly aware of the disastrous and dangerous effects we humans are having on the natural world. The famous naturalist David Attenborough recently warned, this is not about saving our planet, it's about saving ourselves. Throughout the history of theater, human beings' relationship to the natural world has figured prominently, both literally and metaphorically. And often, very often, theater has held the mirror up to show us, to warn us, that human beings are not separate from nature. We are not above nature. We are a part of nature. Humans came into being and were able to thrive because of the balance of nature inherent to this breathing planet. There is rapidly growing evidence of the danger in willfully upsetting this balance. Drastic weather events, massive hurricanes, tsunamis, wildest of wildfires, melting ice caps, exhausted rainforests, and rapidly dying species are making it harder and harder to ignore Attenborough's warning. Can we continue to dominate the natural world as if it belongs to us? As if it is ours to use to satisfy our desires for comfort and profit, as if its life-serving resources are unlimited? If we humans continue to do as we wish with the natural world, we risk our very survival. Since the very beginnings of theater, when the gods of nature were worshipped and appeased, playwrights have often pointed to the high price of trade-offs between self-interest and environmental ruin. They have held the mirror up to nature in hopes that we see a reflection. The Elizabethans believed that dysfunction in the political world is mirrored in the natural world. The global conflicts over the oil industry, the struggle to bring nations together in the Paris Climate Accords, the fight over resources in indigenous lands, the ongoing political battle over regulating industry, are but a few examples that demonstrate the contemporary resonance of that Elizabethan belief. Titania, queen of the powerful fairy world in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, argues with the equally powerful King Oberon that their impassioned conflict is creating devastating natural disaster.
These are the forgeries of jealousy. And never, since the middle summer's spring, met we on hill, in dale, forest, or mead, to dance our ringlets to the whistling wind. But with thy brawls thou hast disturbed our sport. Therefore the winds, piping to us in vain as in revenge, have sucked up from the sea contagious fogs, which falling in the land made every pelting river made so proud that they have overborne their continents. The ox hath therefore stretched his yoke in vain. The plowman lost his sweat, and the green corn hath rotted, ere his youth attained a beard. The fold stands empty in the drowned field, and crows are fatted with the murren flock. The 9 men's morris is filled up with mud, and the quaint mazes in the wanton green, for lack of tread, are undistinguishable. The human mortals want their winter here. No night is now with him or carol blessed. Therefore the moon, the governess of floods, pale in her anger, washes all the air, that rheumatic diseases do abound. And through this distemperature we see the seasons alter. Hoary-headed frosts fall in the fresh lap of the crimson rose, and on old Heem's thin and icy crown, an odorous chaplet of sweet summer buds is, as in mockery, set. The spring, the summer, childing autumn, angry winter change their wonted liveries, and the mazed world, by their increase, now knows not which is which. And this same progeny of evils comes from our debate, from our dissension. We are their parents and original.
In the early 1900s, smooth-talking men were hired by industry barons to go into the Appalachian Mountains and swindle farmers out of their land by telling them they were only selling the mineral rights, that they could keep their land. One farmer received 12 rifles and 13 hogs in exchange for the mineral rights to his land that has since produced billions of dollars worth of coal. Tall Tales, one out of 9 plays that together comprise the Pulitzer Prize-winning saga The Kentucky Cycle by Robert Schenken, is set against this historical backdrop. Tall Tales opens and closes on a grown-up Marianne Rowan looking back on the time that smooth-talking storyteller J.T. Wells charmed her daddy into selling the rights to the rocks on his land. Marianne was young and impressionable then, and she fell in love with J.T. and his stories. But she came to learn that stories and truth are far from the same thing.
Spring explodes in these mountains, like a 2-pound charge of double-fine black powder hand-tamped down a rat hole. After months of slate-gray skies and howling winds and that damp mountain cold that bores into your bones like termites in a truckload of wood. It's your dogwood trees that finally announces what everything's been waiting for. First thing some morning, you might see a single blossom hanging there, nice as you please, light pink, the color of a lover's promise. If lies had a color. And then later that afternoon, damned if that bud ain't been joined by 100 others sitting around chatting each other up, Sunday go to meeting style. Of course, dogwood's just the beginning. The spark what really lights the fuse for spring, that's the azaleas. When they get to go, and you'd swear somebody'd scattered a whole handful of lit matches across those hills. Bible stories how old man Moses talked to a burning bush, but for my money, he was just conversing with a scarlet azalea in full bloom. Story just got a little expanded in the retelling, the way stories do. Fella told me a story once, said, all this was covered in ocean once, a long time ago. Now I think sometimes maybe spring is just the mountains dreaming of those days when sharks made their nests up on their peaks. Only I don't put no truck in stories no more.
Goddamn hellbillies. I could cut your hearts out with a rusty razor, but as long as I smiled and told y'all another story, you just sit there, happy as pigs in shit. Oh, Lord, I can't do this no more. I can't do this. Everything I ever told you was lies. All of it. Ooh, your poor old pa thinking he's slick as goose shit. $1 an acre, what a joke. Oh, he really got me, he did. Burned my ass, your old man. There he is, sitting on top of maybe 15, 20,000 tons of coal an acre. That is millions of dollars he sold me for a lousy buck. Millions. Oh, I promised Jed they'd be real careful with your land. Oh, yes, sir, they careful. Careful not to miss a trick. First, they come in here, they cut down all your trees. Hey, listen to me. First, they cut down all your trees. Then they blast the topsoil to get to those surface veins. They scoop it out and they wash it down with water from your creeks. And then they start hunting those deep veins. They cut into the land deep, hunting them out with their deep mines, dumping the crap they can't use into your wells, your streams, your fields, wherever. And then they just move on, leaving your land colder and deader than that moon up there. Truth? Hell, woman, there ain't no such thing. All there is stories. And everybody got his stories. Your daddy, he's got a story. That he's the son of pioneers, real honorable men who came out here to carve a home out of these mountains. But that ain't the truth. Your daddy's the son of thieves who came out here and slaughtered the Indians and took their land. Those Standard Oil people, the people I work for, they're thieves too. They'll come out here and they'll pay your daddy $1 an acre and congratulate themselves on their honesty. But they are stealing this land from him just as sure as his daddy stole it from the Indians. And you think they're going to sleep any worse at night than your pa does? Maybe when they come out here, they'll cut the heart out of that old oak tree you love so much. And they'll ship it off to New York, and somebody will carve it into a fine banker's desk and swivel-back chair for Mr. Rockefeller himself. And you think, when he sits his skinny ass down on that polished surface, that he is going to be thinking about some poor hillbilly girl whose heart got broke in the process? You won't be part of his story, Mary Ann. And when I'm done here, I won't be part of his story either. See, he's gonna give some money to a school or something. And grateful people are gonna call him a great man, a hero, a real Christian. And that story is the one that'll survive. He'll see to that. While the other one, the one where he's just a thief, that'll fade away. There's your truth. All of us got our stories. And people want to believe each other, see, because if we stop believing in each other, we stop believing in ourselves. The whole damn thing falls apart. And that's how someone like me can do what he does. I say what people want me to say, and I am whatever they want me to be.
They came a couple years later, just like JT said they would. And they cut down all the trees, including my oak. I was right about it holding up the sky, because when they chopped it down, everything fell in. Moon and stars and all. Spring's different now. Without the trees, you get no color, no green explosion. You get nothing to hold the land down, neither. What you get is just a whole lot of rain, moving a whole lot of mud. I try to tell my boy Joshua what it was like, so he'll know, so it won't be forgotten. But he just looks at me and laughs. Mama's telling stories again, he says. Maybe I am.
Trees are often referred to as the lungs of the planet because of the oxygen they provide to other living things and the vital role they play in maintaining the balance of the interwoven systems of the natural world. Since 1990, it is estimated that 420 million hectares of forest have been lost through conversion to other land uses. Circle the Wagons is a tragic, funny, absurd circus of a play where an oblivious, perfect couple speak and sing to each other the language of commercials, and the homeless dance. But through the song and dance and laughter, playwright Lee Hunt delivers a serious warning. Warning of the danger in cutting down the very last tree. She and he live a comfortable consumer life inside a circle of appliances. They have the perfect marriage, the perfect home, the perfect children, and their own police officer to keep the homeless away. She, Jr., a logger, has just cut down the very last tree and fled to her home, to her family.
We're all gonna be changed back. Back, all the way back. I have to tell you, I'm not alone. I don't know what it is. No one does. When it catches up to me, it'll change me back. It'll change you back too. Nothing can escape it. We call it no wilderness. We came to the last tree, a Monterey cypress. We had cut our way to the coast. They chose me, a woman, to harvest the last tree. It was an honor, a real honor to be chosen as the one to harvest it. But I had the strangest feeling about this tree. This tree was trying to communicate with me, to psych me out, you understand? In my imagination, it wasn't a tree at all. It was a hand, its long, spreading branches, fingers reaching out to its friends for help. In cutting it, I wouldn't be slicing through its trunk. I'd be slicing through its wrist. Damn this tree! The tree put these gruesome thoughts in my mind. I planted my feet, I spit on my hands, I lifted my axe. But for a brief second, I caught a glimpse of the tree's reflection on the beach. It was shuddering. I swear, independent of whatever wind there was and the tide and everything, it was shuddering. All the more reason to send this tree to its ancestors. In my hand, the axe leaps. I cut and I cut and I cut. Wham, wham, wham! But God, the sound it made as I cut into it. And then it fell. In a fraction of the time it took to fell, it was delimbed, the buckers did their work, the drag lines were attached, it was skidded to its landing, sorted, and on a flatbed bound for the mill. But it wasn't entirely gone. Its reflection remained. Shadow. The tree was gone, but its shadow remained. It was the shadow of a tree. It was the only tree left, had been the only tree. And now there was the shadow, shuddering, just like I saw it doing when I was cutting down the tree that made it. At first, we didn't believe our eyes. And then we became real quiet because we did believe our eyes. And then we took to laughing. We thought the whole thing was rip-roaringly funny, but when we were all laughed out, we were frightened. No one said it aloud, but we all knew in the same moment we had to remove that shadow. It was an affront, something beyond our reach, beyond our control, taunting us, giving us the finger. We did everything we could think of. We shined searchlights on it to white it out. We blocked the sun. We blocked the moon. We built a dock over it. We had engineers from Chernobyl try to help us bury it in cement. We dropped bombs on it. We nuked it. But whatever we did, the shadow remained. Worse, it grew. Whatever we did just encouraged it. It fed on our attacks. Our very thoughts enlarged it. The angrier we became, the more it spread until it was the deep and dark black ocean. And we watched in horror as this formless thing sat up, spread into the atmosphere, dripping darkness on everything below. A blob, an all-devouring blob, rose up, became everything that was to our front, and came for us. We were defenseless against it, powerless to stop it. My crew said it was no wilderness and began to run like hell. I was the last to go. Somehow I thought it was up to me to try to stop it. Men had chosen me to harvest the tree. Now I had the chance to repay their trust. As the mushrooming shadow drifted inland, I watched as it passed over unsuspecting people, people who had no knowledge of it, just ordinary people going about their business. And when no wilderness passed over them, in that instant they were changed back. And I knew then it was hopeless. It had gone too far, and I knew too that I would be changed back. And all I could think of at that point was to be with my family, to be changed back with someone who loved me so that we'd be changed back together. At least we'll be changed back together.
For some artists, capitalism and the destruction of the natural world are inseparable, and this theme pulses through many contemporary plays. The works of one of the most important playwrights of the 20th and 21st centuries, Caryl Churchill, often points to how the rampant flow of capitalism has put our very humanity at risk. In Far Away, Churchill has created a dystopian world where art is represented by elaborate and outrageous hats created with industrial efficiency. The hats are used to decorate the heads of parades of ragged prisoners marching toward incinerators, where the hats and bodies alike will go up in flames. At the end of the play, the world has dissolved into global war. Everything is at war. Humans, animals, trees, rivers, the dark, the light, all fighting. And no one knows which side any other is on. Joan has fought her way through this horror for one day with her husband.
Of course, birds saw me. Everyone saw me walking along, but no one knew why. I could have been on a mission. Everybody's moving about and no one knows why. And in fact, I killed 2 cats and a child under 5, so it wasn't that different from a mission. And I don't see why I can't have one day and then go back. I'll go on to the end after this. It wasn't so much the birds I was frightened of. It was the weather. The weather here is on the side of the Japanese. There were thunderstorms all through the mountains. I went through towns I hadn't been before. The rats are bleeding out of their mouths and ears, which is good. And so were the girls by the side of the road. It was tiring there because everything's been recruited. There were piles of bodies. And if you stop to find out, there was one killed by coffee or one killed by pins. They were killed by heroin, petrol, chainsaws, hairspray, bleach, foxgloves. The smell of smoke was where we were burning the grass that wouldn't serve. The Bolivians are working with gravity. That's a secret, so as not to spread alarm. But we're getting further with noise, and there's thousands dead of light in Madagascar. Who's going to mobilize darkness and silence? That's what I wondered in the night. By the third day, I could hardly walk.
but I got down to the river. There was a camp of Chilean soldiers upstream, but they hadn't seen me. And 14 black and white cows downstream having a drink. So I knew I'd have to go straight across. But I didn't know whose side the river was on. It might help me swim, or it might drown me. In the middle, the current was moving much faster. The water was brown. I didn't know if that meant anything. I stood on the bank a long time. But I knew it was my only way of getting here. So at last, I put one foot in the river. The water was very cold. But so far, that was all. When you've just stepped in, you can't tell what's going to happen. The water laps round your ankles in any case.
In the late 1880s, a Dene medicine man prophesied the atomic bomb as a burning vision that will come a long time in the future. In her sweeping metaphorical play, Burning Vision, Canadian Matisse playwright and performer Marie Clements traces the source of those prophesied bombs, uranium, on its journey from deep underground to testing sites in New Mexico to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Characters, times, and places are woven together in a theatrical tapestry that speaks for the many lives that were torn asunder long before the bombs were created, let alone dropped. Round Rose, an aged Eva Toguri, Tokyo Rose, delivers a blistering attack on the public apology that is so often used to dampen outrage and allow the ongoing abuse of power.
Hey, neighbor. I'm sorry it's so not howdy-doody. Just kidding. Americans are Americans, and everybody else is sorry. Half the time, we don't even know what we are sorry about. It just squeaks out of our sorry gaps before we even include into the conversation. Well, I'm sorry you're all so sorry. You have to know when to be sorry. You can't really be sorry for something you don't want to remember, can you? Selective memory, isn't it? Let's be honest. Hell, you can't even apologize for the shit you did yesterday, never mind 50 years ago. Indian residential schools, Japanese internment camps. Hell, and this is just in your neighborhood. But it's all right. Everybody's sorry these days. The politicians are sorry. The cops are sorry. The priests are sorry. The logging companies are sorry. Mining companies, electric companies, water companies, wife beaters, serial rapists, child molesters, mommy and daddy, everybody's sorry. Everybody's sorry they got caught sticking it to someone else. That's what they are sorry about. Getting caught. They could give a rat's ass about you or me or the people they are saying sorry to. Think about it. Don't be a sorry ass. Be sorry before you have to say you are sorry. Be sorry for even thinking about bringing about something sorry-filled. And the next time someone says, there is one law for everyone, say, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. Just kidding. No, that was harsh. Anyhow, sayonara.
Playwright Caridad Svitch writes of a hut in the woods where people running from the worst conditions imaginable were provided with poetry, food, shelter, and safe passage by its inhabitants. The speaker, who has recently come to the hut, shares a letter written to her by the ocean.
Shall we talk to each other for a while? Shall we listen to our stories in exchange for nothing except to be here? Just be here with each other? I'd been thinking about what the world would be like now after I'd been in the hut. I'd been thinking about how it was that we were able to recall the songs of those who had passed, but couldn't make our own songs last. A letter came from the ocean. It was addressed to the person who went away to the hut in the woods. The letter was enclosed in a small envelope that smelled of lilac. I opened the seal carefully. It's not every day, after all, that the ocean writes you a letter. The paper was gossamer thin. The letter began, "Dear person that went away to the hut in the woods while the world was on fire. I don't imagine that you know what you sound like, but from where I live, it sounds as if every word is dandelion. I hadn't heard that word in a long time, just like I hadn't heard the words nectar, willow, since you were 7 years of age. I missed those words. I like them better than blog and cut and paste. But then again, you know that because you are here, in the woods, in the hut where a poet once lived and others too. And soon you will go back to your city and try to live your life again. And perhaps let go some of your rage, and perhaps start to look at others with kindness. It's not easy, I know. I am used to my rage too. It can be useful. It is a part of us after all. Sometimes I rage so much that my waves destroy everything. And I think they will learn now. These humans will learn because they have brains. They have logic and reason. And they have this thing too called imagination. And with it, they can do so much good, and so much beauty, and so much music. And sometimes when I hear their songs, I can't help but get emotional. I'm a softie that way. I hope you can forgive me. I know being soft is not in fashion these days, but sometimes I can't help myself. Because sometimes, on certain days, when light hits the sky a certain way, or I see someone walking along the beach, their eyes full of possibility, or some child is rescued in a peacekeeper's arms while bombs carry their city away, I think, I'm in love. I really am. I love you all so much.
What can be said between a planet and the people that have done it harm? Playwright Chantal Billadieu approaches this question in the following monologue, a monologue in which she gives voice to our bruised but ever compassionate world. Here, Mother Nature herself offers both assurance and reproof, asking one thing of us all, that we do not look away.
Look at me. Why won't you look at me? You are such a surprise. No one was waiting for you. No one was expecting you. The idea of you hadn't even crossed my mind. You just showed up one day out of nowhere, a fully formed creature, a little beast with its own will, ready to take the world by storm. I should have seen it coming, of course. I should have realized when you crawled out of the ocean that something was happening, that something had been set in motion. But the truth is, it was also random. A little mutation here, a little mutation there, and boom, there you were, with your big head and your big brain, so proud of yourself for standing on your own 2 feet. And that's the beauty of it. That's the real miracle. Somehow, in the space of a geological flicker, chaos organized itself into you. Why won't you look at me? Then one day it happened. One day you spread your wings and set out to make the world your own. And what a day that was. Drunk with your own power, you heard and saw and tasted. You experienced and learned, invented and discovered, organized and cataloged. It was so exhilarating. I watched you grow, innocent and carefree, incapable of imagining that, well, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. We used to gaze into each other's eyes, remember? From dusk to dawn and dawn to dusk, I held you close, and we lost ourselves in each other's mystery. That was before you started calling me mother, before there was anything to call mother. I was you, and you were me. There was no distance to travel, no otherness to name. It was our version of Eden, our own little paradise. You know, maybe the proverbial apple wasn't plucked from a tree. Maybe it was extracted from the ground. Look at me. I wish you would look at me, simply, without guilt or shame. I may be sick. I may be oozing thick black blood, but I'm not angry. I know you. For billions of years, I have carried you in my womb. You are made of me. You, my little piece of eternity, my little miracle. I know you are not ill-intentioned. I know you are not oblivious. I know you are not mean. You care. You want the best. You love. Yes, you do. Maybe imperfectly, but you love. The past is behind us. Let it go. And the future is forever hidden in the double helix of a cell. But now is here. Now is us. Now is our time for forgiving what has been done, for rediscovering what has been lost, for healing what has been hurt. Now is our chance to bridge that distance again and reclaim the Eden that was before there was Mother. Look at me, please. If I see myself in your eyes, I'll know that everything will be okay.
Theater has historically lent itself to activism, responding to social and ecological crises, lending a platform to marginalized voices, and drawing attention to real-world tragedies. Calls for new plays that address the climate crisis have sprung up around the world, a testament to the theater's ability to serve as a call to action, inspiring both individuals and communities to change for the better.